Okay, today we'll continue with polymeric science. Okay. May you confirm if you are able to see my slides? Confirm before we start. Are you able to see?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. Um. Okay. So polymeric science, we'll just start where we will not proceed where we ended. We just start all over. So we'll start from the very first slide. Okay. So firstly, we need to know what a polymer is. What is a polymer? Okay, so a polymer is made up of several monomer units that are connected together in a long chain. Okay, polymers are either naturally occurring or they may be synthetic. We give examples of naturally occurring polymers, examples of what carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and others. I heard somebody mention DNA as one example of the natural polymer. Okay, that was okay also. Then we also have other examples of synthetic polymers such as polyethylene. Now, polyethylene, it is composed of ethylene monomer units. Now, these monomer units are connected by different methods, to come together. Some methods that are used to connect these monomer units to make up the polymer. We have got one, additional reactions, or what we call addition reactions. These are the reactions in which one polymer is added, one monomer is added on another to make sure that we make up a polymer. Okay. So other processes by which a polymer can be made is by condensation, where a small molecule is lost, which is a small molecule is lost during the formation of such a polymer. Okay. So now polymers may also be called according to the type of the monomer units that are there in the structure. Okay. Now, if a polymer contains identical monomer units, that is one type of throughout the whole chain, then that polymer is called a homo. Homo means, okay, that means the same or identical monomer units present. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if polymers are made with more than one type of monomer unit in the structure, such polymers are called the copolymers. They are called the copolymers. That means that there is more than one type of polymer, and one or two or three. Okay, so those are the types of the polymers according to the type of the monomer unit that is present in the structure. Okay. Now let us look at, let us start with homopolymers. Let us discuss the homopolymers in detail. One example or examples of homopolymers include polyethylene, polystyrene, polyvinyl alcohol, polyacrylamide, and then polyvinyl pyrrolidone. Okay, so those are some of the examples of the homopolymers, meaning they have the same monomer unit that is connected one after another to make that homopolymer that we have mentioned. Examples of polyethylene, polystyrene, polyvinyl alcohol, polyacrylamide, and also polyvinyl pyrrolidone. Okay. All right. Homopolymers usually constitute between about 100 to 10,000 monomer units in a structure. But now, those polymers that contain all the structures that contain monomer units that are less than 100, we'll call them maybe oligomers. Yes, there are so many types depending on how many monomer units are present in that structure. If there are two monomer units in that structure, then that structure is called a dimer. If there are three, it is called a trimer. If there are four, then it's called a tetramer. Okay. So all these, like I said, are called oligomers because they contain the monomer units that are within 100 monomer units. Okay, so above 100 to 10,000, that is called the polymer. Okay, I'm sure that is clear. Okay, now polymers, the homopolymers may be linear or may be branched. So homopolymers may be linear or may be branched. So let us look at the branched homopolymers. Homopolymers may also be branched. Branches usually represented with R and are usually called substituents. Okay, so the homopolymers have substituents which are represented by the letter R. I think this is not the first time we're meeting this letter R representing a substituent. Okay, now the branched homopolymers are so many in types, but then they are dependent on the arrangement of these substituents that are there on the chain. Okay, so initially there's a long backbone, a central chain that is there of a polymer, and then about that central chain there are radiating some R which are substituents. Okay, so there's so many. There are about 3 arrangements that we have of the R groups, and because of such arrangements, these homopolymers, branched homopolymers, will be called by different names based on how these R groups or R substituents are radiating from this backbone. Okay, so if the R groups are on the same side of the chain, these branched homopolymers are actually said to be isotactic, meaning iso means same. Okay, so meaning the arrangement of the R groups about the chain are on the same side. So the last time that we said it can be on top or down, but as long as they are on the same side, that polymer is said to be isotactic. If the R groups, on the other hand, are alternating above and below the chain, and these are called syndiotactic. So when we say syndiotactic, it means there is some kind of symmetry, meaning there is regular alternation that is there. You'll be able to see the illustration in the next slide. Now, another type of a branched homopolymer is a random arrangement, the one that is called atactic. The one that is said to be atactic because the R groups are organized in a way that they are random. There is no order that is followed, either below or down in a regular pattern. There's nothing like that. So these are just arranged anyhow, and this arrangement is called atactic, where addition of an A on this word atactic means without. Okay, right. So this is an illustration that I was talking about. The first polymer that we are seeing, you can see to say here is here the first structure. There is a long backbone that we are able to see. Okay, there is a long backbone that we are able to see. Now this backbone that we are able to see, there are R groups on it. Now those R groups that are on that one, you can see to say they are all on the same side. Now I should assume we understand the representation of the wedge, solid wedge, okay, the solid wedge, and also the dashed wedge. Okay, so I assume that we do understand. Okay, when we say the solid wedge, the dashed. So you can see to say on the first structure, all of the R groups, they are on the solid wedge, and then that means layman's language would say they are all facing us. So that means they are on the same side. So that is isotactic, just to explain the point that I already said on top. Then the second structure that we are able to see here, it has R groups that are alternating, and that structure is syndiotactic. So please, you need to pay attention to these words. This is a syndiotactic polymer. you can see to say the first is facing us, meaning on the solid wedge, and then the next arrow group, which is on the it is facing away from us, meaning it is on the dashed okay, it is on the dashed wedge. Okay, it continues like that. Okay, so the next structure, it is a tactic in arrangement in that the arrow groups themselves they don't follow any regular pattern. You can see to say the first structure, the first arrow, it is on the solid wedge, and then the next arrow, it is on the dashed wedge. It is facing away from us, and then it follows that way. The next arrow, which is the third arrow there, it is on the solid wedge, and the next is on the solid wedge, meaning there is no regular pattern that we are being that is being followed here. So that is a random arrangement, and so it is called a tactic. I'm pretty sure we have understood this one very well. Okay, so is there any question so far? Is there any question so far? If you have a question, please just interrupt, or maybe you may raise your hand. All right, seemingly there's no question. Okay, let's move to the next thing. Let us look at the copolymers. Okay, we are looking at the homopolymers as one type of the polymer structures. We said they contain the same monomer units throughout, and they may be linear or branched. So we are done with the homopolymers. I think we have seen the different types, especially on the branches. We said they are isotactic, syndiotactic, and atactic. These are terms that you can never forget. Okay, let's get to the copolymers. Copolymers, they are made from more than one type of monomer units, and then those monomer units may either be they may be arranged in so many ways, either in an alternating arrangement or in a random arrangement. There is no problem. They can also be matched. There is no problem. Okay, so there are many types of copolymers, and these may be put according to the arrangement of these different monomer units in a linear form. Okay, now like I said, these monomer units may be arranged in a random way or in an alternating way. Now, if we say we represent the monomer units with the letter A and the next monomer unit to be represented by letter B. So when we talk about the alternating arrangement of where I'm on this point here, when we talk about the alternating arrangement here, we are trying to say that if monomer A begins, then the next one is monomer B, then the next one is monomer A, the next one is monomer B, just like that. It continues. That is what we call an alternating manner of arrangement of the monomer units in the copolymer structure. Okay. So in a random way, we can say we can have the A's following each other, and later on we have the B's, then A's. There is no problem. There is no order that is being followed. That means we can have A, then we can have B, 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 then A, then A, then B, B, continue just like that. There's no proper order that is there. So I'm pretty sure that is clear. Okay. So linear copolymers may be constructed from blocks of monomer units, and these are called block copolymers. Now, the monomer units may be arranged in a block form. Okay, in a block form where we have A's, maybe let me say the first set of A's, and then the first set of A makes the A block, and then the next set of B's makes the B block. So A block connected to B block, it makes what we call a block copolymer. So that is what we mean. So this is an illustration. So the first structure that we are seeing, that is called a block copolymer. Now, if you look at this structure, you see to say there are A monomer units that are starting. This is in orange here. You can see to say there is a block of A monomer units, and then next to it there is connection of a block of the B monomer units. So this is what we call the block copolymer. Okay. So the next polymer that you are seeing here, this is a random copolymer. It is a random copolymer because there is no better following of the structures. The monomer units are not following each other in a regular pattern. They're not following each other in a regular pattern. So you can see to say the first one that starts is B, and then we have got 3 A's there, then a B, then there's an A, there's B. So that is what we call the random copolymer. Now, why do we call it a copolymer? It's because there are 2 types of monomer units that are present in a structure, and so that gives it a difference from the homopolymer. A homopolymer, you'd have seen the A's alone, or if it were B's, then you'd have seen only B's. Now, moving to next one, you can see to say this is a copolymer, yes, having the monomer units A and B, but then these monomer units are arranged in their alternating manner. So A starts B, then next A, then B, then next A. So you can see to say there's a regular arrangement there. Okay, I'm pretty sure you understand this illustration from the previous few steps. Okay, copolymers continued. All right, sorry about that. So copolymers continued. So depending on the number of blocks that constitute the polymer structure, copolymers may be diblock, triblock, or maybe may have more than, maybe, can I say tetrablock? Yeah, more than 3, that is about 4. Okay, so those are now that is dependent on the number of the blocks that we have in that chain. So from the first one, I want us to practice something. From the first one, what type of the block copolymer is this one? Can somebody try to mention what type of the block copolymer this first one is? Is it a diblock, triblock, or what type of a polymer is this one? We'll start with Elizabeth. What type of block copolymer is A? The first one? This one.
I don't know. Am I supposed
You
to
don't
count?
know? Okay, fine. Okay. How many blocks are you able to see? How many blocks are you able to see in this structure?
Depending on the type or the number of each.
Okay, so the block is made up. Now, when we say this is the A block, we mean this chain of the A monomer units right there. So that is the A block. So that is the first block that we have. Okay, that is the first block that we have up to there. So the next one is the B block that follows. So how many blocks are we seeing there?
2. So it's a die.
Yes. What is that called?
Die.
Okay, that's a die block. Okay, fine. So okay, so that is basically that. Now this is not a block copolymer. This is not a block copolymer. Even this one is not a block copolymer. Okay, so let us move to the next thing. So I'm sure you understand. Now the there are so many arrangements of the blocks. It may be the die block in which there is A block starts and followed by the B block. That is an AB die block. Okay. So sometimes B starts and then A remains. That is called a BA die block. Okay. So tri blocks. The tri blocks, it can be ABA, meaning A block starts, then B in the middle, and then we have got the A ending. So that is a tri block. Then we can also have in a different form where B starts and the A block in the middle, and then we have the B block finishing. So that is the ABA tri block or BAB tri block. Now, examples of ABA tri block. Now, this is very important. You can even see to say this type of arrangement, there are materials that follow this type of arrangement of polymers. There is an example of an ABA tri block where the A block and there is the B, then there is a type of blocks that are there in that copolymer. Now they include what we call the proxemas, in which the A chain constitutes the polyoxyethylene, and then the B chain constitutes the polyoxypropylene block. Okay, so just to keep alternating, where there is A, you put polyoxyethylene, and then where there is B, you put a polyoxypropylene. So I'm pretty sure that we understand when we say polyoxyethylene, there's an ethylene structure there that is connected to another structure, the polyox structure. Okay, so basically this is an alternation. So A starts, meaning polyoxyethylene starts, then in the middle there is polyoxypropylene, and then next there is polyoxyethylene again. So in that arrangement. Is there any question so far? Are we understanding, or we are lost somewhere? Please feel free to interrupt or raise a hand so I can see you. Okay. There is another type of polymers. There is another type of a copolymer. The type of copolymer that is called a graft copolymer. Now, to graft is to try to it's like attaching something to some kind of an original stuff. I think we are trying to connect something from the main thing. Okay, so it is a type of a copolymer in which the backbone consists of repeating units of one type of monomer units. Then another type of repeating monomer units are connected to this block, to this backbone in a comb-like manner. Now we know how a comb for hair is. Okay, so it is like there is a main thing, and then from there some small structures are alternating from there. So we need to note that polymers may also be cross-linked, in which case they form a three-dimensional structure, and then we'll see how important that cross-linking is. Okay, so I'm pretty sure we understand what a graft copolymer is. I'm illustrating it right here. There's an illustration. Monomer unit 1, this is a monomer unit 1, which is M1. That is the monomer unit that we're talking about there. So there's one backbone. There's a backbone here for one type of monomer unit. This is a polymeric backbone. And then from that polymeric backbone, we have monomer unit 2. The monomer unit 2, which are M2s that are actually radiating from this one. So we have grafted from there, and that is called a graft. Okay, I'm pretty sure we understand what a graft copolymer is, right? Okay, so I'm sure we understand what a graft copolymer is. Okay, if there's no question, I'm continuing. Please feel free to interrupt me if you're having a question, just in case I'm not able to see your hand raised. Okay, now what are the properties of polymers? What are the properties of polymers? Initially, we have got a lot of properties of polymers, a lot of them, such that if we are to talk about all of them without putting them in a certain order or certain groupings, we are likely to forget some of them. So in order to exhaust all of them, or maybe most of them, if not all, then we need to group them in some order or in some categories or in some groups. Now, there are a few groups of properties of polymers. These are morphological properties, these are bulk properties, these are chemical properties, these are mechanical properties, and also thermal properties. Now, if you were not listening, this is at the point where I want you to at least tune to this point. I want you to really listen very well and attentively here, because this is where now chemistry begins. Okay. All right. So let us try to listen properly here and very well. Okay. So let us start with the morphological properties. Now, morphology means form. Now, form may be shape and sometimes arrangement. Okay. Now, in the context of polymers, morphology means shape and arrangement. Okay. Now, polymers exist in three major forms. Polymers exist in three major morphologies or forms. These are crystalline, semi-crystalline, and also amorphous. Okay. Crystalline, semi-crystalline, and also amorphous. So these are the types of these are the different morphologies that we have. I would want somebody to ask a question, Spa, if there is any question on either a previous slide or on this slide that we are on, before I read the definitions. Is there any question that you would like to clarify? Any question? Please confirm if you have a question before I proceed with defining this. Any question? All right. All right. Let's continue. Now, crystalline polymers. This is one form of a polymer that we have, the crystalline form. There is a high degree of order in the polymer structure in terms of packing and also stacking of individual polymer chains. Now, these morphologies are based on how these polymer chains are packing. Okay. Now, a polymer may not only constitute one chain, they may be more than one chains that are present. Okay. So those chains can pack with each other. Okay. Now the packing may be crystalline, semi-crystalline, or they may also be okay, or they may also be amorphous. That means crystalline, their packing or the packing of these chains is very regular, or it is they are packing very well. Okay, they are packing very well, such that there is a proper structure arrangement. Okay, so we'll see the properties for these morphologies. Okay, so semi-crystalline, those are the ones that have got at least the portions for crystalline, that have got crystalline portions, meaning there is a proper packing somewhere in a structure, and then another part of the structure there is no proper packing. Okay, so that is a semi-crystalline. It's also called a semi-amorphous, meaning it is not fully crystalline, it is not fully amorphous. Okay, so the amorphous structure of the polymer, this is a type of a polymer in which there is highly disorder. There is high disorder because of the chain entanglement. Okay, there is a lot of disorder because of the chain entanglement. Okay, so these are the definitions of the morphological properties of polymers. So unless there's a question, please, if there is a question, do well to ask. Okay, polymer structure and crystallinity. So now we want to see the relationship between the polymer structure and also crystallinity. Now we do understand what crystallinity is. Crystallinity is the arrangement, the high degree of polymer chain packing. Polymer chain packing, the high degree of polymer chain packing is what we call the crystallinity. Okay. Right, so regular and orderly polymer chains will pack well and closely, hence promoting crystallinity. So now this is how the polymer structure is going to affect crystallinity. Now, there are structures that are regular and orderly, meaning they are in order the way they are. We'll give an example. Okay, we're going to give an example. Now, the more orderly they are, that's easier, the easier with which they are going to pack. Okay, meaning if they are very ordered in terms of the chain arrangements or in terms of the substituent arrangements, then they can pack closely. And if they can pack closely, then that ultimate structure is going to be crystalline, meaning there is proper packing. Okay, so the question, there is a question here that we need to answer, and so I want people to participate here. I am going to pose a question. There's also an answer, but then I want us to explain the answer. Okay, I want us to explain the answer. The question is polystyrene. Remember polystyrene, it is an example of a homopolymer. Polystyrene exists in two forms. Okay, that is, the polystyrene is the one form of polystyrene is atactic, meaning there is no proper arrangement of the substituents, meaning it is branched. So, but then the branches are not arranged in a regular pattern. And there is also the syntactic form. Now, between the two forms, which one is more crystalline and more amorphous? So the answer is syntactic is more crystalline. The syntactic form of polystyrene is more crystalline, while the other one, which is the atactic form, it is less crystalline, meaning it is amorphous. So let us explain the answer. Who is able to explain why the syntactic is more crystalline and the atactic is more amorphous? Please let us contribute there. I'm not proceeding until somebody says something here. The question is there and the answer is there. We're explaining we're trying to explain the answer there.
I think with the syntactic, the R groups are alternating, and so it's more like an orderly way, and so it will be crystalline.
Okay. All right. That was who? That was wasn't that was Elizabeth?
Tiza.
Oh, okay, Tiza. All right. You said the syntactic has got alternating arrow groups, and so there's some kind of an orderly arrangement there, and so when they pack, they'll pack properly. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's perfect. All right. Okay. That is correct. Then is there any other person who would like to explain why The other one is going to be more amorphous, the atactic. Okay, it's the same explanation, meaning on the atactic one, there is no order, and so there will be areas of that are going to be amorphous, meaning there are areas that are going to entangle each other, or areas that are going to be hindering each other from parting well. So that is why the atactic one is going to be crystalline. So now let us look at the intermolecular forces that are there in a structure, in a polymer structure, and also crystallinity, how they affect crystallinity. The question is, give at least examples of intermolecular forces, briefly explaining how they affect polymer crystallinity. Okay, so this one is going to be a homework. I want you to go and think. I'm pretty sure we understand the intermolecular forces such as van der Waals forces, the electrostatic forces, the hydrogen bonds, and we do understand all these forces that are there. But then, how do they affect? If there are those intermolecular structures in the polymer structure, how do they affect the crystallinity of the polymer? So that is intermolecular forces and crystallinity. So when we come tomorrow, when we meet tomorrow, we'll need to discuss that. I want people to bring out answers. Now let us look at bulk properties. Bulk properties are physical properties, the properties that we are able to see with our eyes. These include tensile strength, then they include Young's modulus of elasticity, then transport properties. Now I want you to pay so much attention to the transport properties as well. Now this explains the water or molecule diffusivity in a polymer, meaning how water is able to diffuse through that polymer. So that property of a polymer is really quiet. So as a pharmacist, you really need to understand why this transport property of the bulk properties is very important, because we are going to be dealing with molecules transversing or moving through a polymer structure to get into the biologic environment. So this is why this is very important. So Young's modulus of elasticity, this explains the property of elasticity of a polymer. Tensile strength, this explains how much stress a polymer will have to endure before it breaks. We need to take note that these properties are very important, and that if you understand them, then you are going to benefit a lot from them. So those are about chemical properties, meaning these are dealing with the chemical nature of the polymer. Now, chemical nature of the polymer is dictated by the type of intermolecular forces that are present there, such as dipole-dipole moments, with dipole-dipole interactions, van der Waals forces, and hydrogen bonds and electrostatic interactions. I already gave a homework where we're going to talk about how these intermolecular forces affect crystallinity. So basically, these are properties. So you need to know them. So they are quite very easy. I'm rushing here because these are the things that we already know. We know dipole interactions. We know van der Waals forces. We know the hydrogen bonds. We just have to brainstorm and then determine how important are these stars in terms of how do they influence the crystallinity, okay? And how are you going to use them in a polymer structure? How are they important? Okay, let us look at the mechanical properties. These are similar to bulk properties. They are quite physical properties of the polymer also, and they explain the relationship between stress and deformation of the polymer. When you apply a stress to a polymer must deform. Okay, deformation may mean to break, may deform or may reduce size or may increase size, whatever. But these are mechanical properties actually. But basically, they talk about or they consider the relationship between the stress and deformation of the polymer. So not that much to know. Now let us look at the thermal properties. From the physics thermal principles, states that if any substance is subjected to heat, it tends to the particles that make up that substance, they tend to increase in terms of energy. Those particles, they vibrate or they move at a very faster rate or at a very high speed. And when they do that, they want to create more space between themselves, thereby leading to expansion. Now, when subjected to heat, polymers may also undergo two transition orders. Okay, they also undergo the expansion just like any other material when heat is applied to them. Okay? However, polymers will undergo two transition orders. So the first and the second order. The first order transition is a conversion of the crystalline form. Remember, the crystalline form of a polymer is that highly packed structure of a polymer. Now, transformation from that highly packed form to a solid amorphous. A solid amorphous is that one which is less packed, meaning it has got some areas where it is not packed well. There's no crystallinity there. So, meaning conversion from crystalline to a polymer, to a solid amorphous, that is one order. That is called the first order change, transition when a polymer is subjected to it. Okay? So on the other hand, the second order polymer transition is the conversion of a solid amorphous. Now, the second order change is when a solid amorphous changes to a more rubbery and viscous form. Now, think of this. You are changing from a very highly packed to a less packed form, and from a less packed form, which is an amorphous form, it now begins to change to a more rubbery and more viscous. Okay, so the changing from the amorphous to the more rubbery and more viscous, that is what we call the second order change of a polymer when subjected to it. I'm pretty sure that is understood. Now, all these order changes are accompanied by the increase in polymer volume. So, a volume tends to increase. When we change from the more packed to a less packed, the volume increases. Okay, maybe twice the amount that was there for the crystalline. Okay, again, changing from that highly packed, that's loosely packed to a more liquid, then the volume also increases. I think we understand that these are actually physical. These are phase changes. These are phase changes. Is there any question so far on the properties before we look at the component, the last component of today's discussion? Is there any question? Please confirm if there's any question. Any question? If there is no question, please do confirm that there is no question, then we'll proceed. Okay. Let me know if people are able to hear me. Maybe I'm speaking to myself, at least by somebody saying something. Let me know if you can hear me. Please do confirm if you can hear me. Chiza, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can get you.
All right, that is great. We proceed. Now, let us look at the pure component phase behavior, pure component phase behavior. Now, firstly, the thing we need to understand is the title phase. What really does it mean? The pure component phase behavior. Now, pure component, every pure substance must be able to undergo phase changes. Okay, must be able to undergo phase changes from liquid to gas to solid and vice versa. yeah, they should be able to change from one form to another. So this is pure component phase behavior of polymers. So basically also polymers, like any other material, they do undergo the phase changes, but not necessarily the phase changes as changing from solid to liquid to gas to whatsoever. No, but I mean there are some phase behavior that they portray, that they exhibit, that we need to talk about here. And they are quite interesting. They may not be the same as for every other substance, but them, they may be unique to it. Yeah, so let us dig into them. Okay, so these are physical changes that polymers undergo. Okay, physical changes that polymers undergo, that is changes of state of matter. Now in this case, we're going to consider the melting point, we're going to consider the boiling point, then we're going to consider the glass transition temperature, what we call the TG. Now I want you to pay particular attention to these terms because they are very crucial to know. It's very important to understand them. Now, what is the melting point in the case of polymers? This is a transition of a polymer from a crystalline or a the transition of a crystalline form of a polymer or the semi-crystalline form of a polymer to a solid amorphous form. And the temperature at which this occurs is called the crystalline melting temperature. Now, I was talking about the first order and the second order transition of the polymer, of a polymer. I said the first change, we said it is changing from the crystalline or semi-crystalline to the amorphous form. So that is what we call the melting of the polymer. So that is the melting point of the polymer, the temperature at which the polymer transitions from from crystalline form or the semi-crystalline form to a solid amorphous form is what we call the melting. So it's a temperature. Okay, this is a temperature. Probably I should have 10. It's a temperature at which a transition of polymer from crystalline occurs. Okay, so but I'm sure you understand. Okay, it is this temperature is called the crystalline melting temperature. It is represented as Tm. Okay, crystalline melting temperature, meaning changing from crystalline or semi-crystalline to the amorphous form. Now, by now we understand. When we say crystalline, we understand. When we say amorphous, we understand. And which structures are going to be in amorphous state? Are they atactic polymer chains that when put together they will be amorphous? Are they the syntactic polymer structures which when put together will become amorphous or crystalline? So you need to know. By now you need to know. Okay? All right, so when a polymer is given to you and then you are told this polymer is a crystalline polymer, okay, the morphology of this polymer is crystalline, then you should be able to tell within your mind that therefore it is most likely that maybe the type of branching, if there is any branching that is there, the type of branching is either syntactic or isotactic. Okay, so now let us look at the boiling point. Now, usually boiling point in polymers is never defined. Now, boiling point, we do understand that is a point at which the liquid begins to convert into a vapor. Okay, at that temperature which the liquid begins to convert into that. Now, it is not definable in a polymer because usually the boiling point is never reached. The theoretical boiling point of a polymer is never reached in a polymer because when you begin to heat the polymer, the polymer tends to begin to decompose before the theoretical boiling point is reached. So that is why the boiling point of a polymer is never defined. Since the polymer will never exist in a gaseous form as long as it is in this way, that means that the boiling point is not going to exist. So glass transition temperature, this is a very important property. I want to tell you one implication of the glass transition temperature. I want you to understand, and I also want you to search more on the definition, and you need to understand what glass transition temperature is. I will need you to search further because you need to understand this glass transition temperature is. I've got a very good application in the pharmaceutical field. Okay. Now, this is the temperature at which a polymer undergoes a second phase transition from a solid amorphous state to a rubbery or a more rubbery viscously amorphous solid. It wasn't necessarily supposed to be this, but at least changing from the second phase change from second order phase change from a solid amorphous to a more fluid, I would say, a more fluid, which is rubbery or viscous. So if you remember when you looked at the thermal properties, we said there are two orders of changes. Please don't forget there. Two phases of changes. We say the first change is from crystalline to amorphous, and we know what amorphous and crystalline are. And now changing from amorphous to a rubbery and a more viscous form, we say that that is a second order change. And the why do we say so? It's because another feature that occurs is called the TG, glass transition temperature. Now, I've labored so much to explain on these terms because these are terms that are going to help you understand the concept of polymeric science. They'll help you understand the concept of polymeric science. Okay, so please pay attention to them. I'll share these notes at the end. Now, let us look at the glass transition temperature in detail. Before I proceed, is there any question, please? Is there any question, or is the information too much? Please do confirm by saying something. Prudence, are you still there? Yes. Do you have any question, Prudence?
Yes, sir. Can you repeat on glass
Yes,
temperature?
Okay. Okay. Is that the only question? Is there any other person with a question before I attend to Prudence's? Okay. If you do remember under the thermal properties, we said that like any other substance, when a substance has been heated, it tends to increase in volume or size. Why? Because of the attainment of energy of the particles that constitute that substance. Beyond that movement of particles, there's also phase changes that does take place. Phases do change from solid. If it was solid, when particles have vibrated enough, they tend to gain enough energy to even transition from being solid, from that solid crystalline arrangement to a liquid that is loosely arrangement, the loose arrangement of the particles. From there, those liquid particles again, when they gain more energy due to continual addition of the energy, they tend to again want to create more space between themselves by wanting to change into the gaseous form, because we now know that in the gaseous form the room for particles to move is quite larger than the rooms for the liquid and the solid state. Okay. Now, like what happens in any other substance, this also takes place in the polymers. Okay. Now, in polymers, we said instead of changing from solid to liquid to gas, they undergo some two order changes. The first order change is the conversion from the highly ordered form of the polymer, which is a crystalline, to a least ordered form of the polymer, which is the rubbery or viscous. So the transition from the most ordered form, which is the crystalline, to the amorphous form, which is less ordered than the crystalline, that transition is the first order. Now there is a temperature at which that occurs. Okay, that temperature at which that occurs is called the crystalline melting temperature, the TM, crystalline melting temperature, the TM. Okay, so now the second order change is a change from the amorphous form, which is loosely arranged, to a more viscous form, meaning a more fluid form. Now the temperature at which that undergoes, at which that takes place, is called the gas transition temperature. That is the TG that we're talking about. I'm pretty sure you understand now what that means. Now, as all these things happen, there is also increase in the volume of the polymer. So this is what I was talking about here, to say the glass transition temperature is a temperature at which a polymer undergoes a second phase transition from a solid amorphous form to a rubbery or viscous amorphous solid. Now, so that is what we need to understand, some kind of a second order phase. So please, in your definitions, you must always include either first order change or second order change, because that is what makes the difference. One is the first order, which is TM, then TG is the second order change. Let me confirm if Prudence, that answered your question.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me proceed. Okay, let us look at the gas transition temperature in detail, the temperature at which the second phase transition occurs from solid amorphous to a more rubbery or more viscous form. All right, TG is an expression of molecular motion. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that particles tend to move when heat has been applied to them, or particles tend to move when any stress externally has been applied to them. Okay, so now we say TG is an expression of molecular motions, meaning for the polymer to change from the amorphous form, which is still a solid, to a more fluid stuff, there must be molecular movement, meaning particles within the polymer must move. They must begin to move. And that movement is called the segmental motion. The reason why we call it segmental motion may be because the motion is in segments, some kind of segmental motion. Now, the second order phase change cannot take place if there is no segmental motion, meaning particles within the polymer must begin to move. That is when we can experience the second order transition phase. Okay, so now this motion, which is called the segmental motion, it is dependent on many factors, meaning if you have not applied any external force outside, this segmental motion will not take place. So we are saying that this also means that TG is not an absolute value. It is not an absolute property, since it is affected by any factors which will influence the molecular motion in a polymer chain. Meaning, if heat is going to affect the molecular motion of the molecular motion of the polymer, then it means that TG therefore is going to be dependent on the amount of that heat. Okay, so if any other factor comes to affect this segmental motion, then it means that now TG will be dependent on that. If intermolecular force is going to affect the segmental motion, then it means that now Tg is going to be dependent on that factor of intermolecular mass. If cross-linking is a factor that is going to affect the segmental motion, then that means that Tg therefore now is going to be dependent on the match that this cross-linking is taking. So now I guess you do understand why we are saying Tg is not an absolute property. Now, true or false? Tg is not an absolute property. I want somebody to answer me. Tiza, true or false? Tg is not an absolute property of a polymer.
Okay, I think I'm lost. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. Who is able to answer this question? True or false? Tg is not an absolute property of, it's not an absolute property. Let me say in polymer science. True or false? Anyone to answer that?
Maybe repeat the question again.
Okay. Tg is not an absolute property in polymeric science. True or false?
I would say true.
You'd say true? Okay.
Yep.
What reason can you give as to why Tg value is not an absolute property?
Well, you were just from saying it's affected by many forces. So maybe
Okay.
that.
Yes, that's the answer. I just wanted to confirm if you are listening. So it is affected by many factors, meaning it can be blown by any factor that comes. So it is not an absolute, it's not a dependable factor where we can say, okay, it's a constant value, where we can say, okay, it's constant. No, it remains in a range. Okay, it is not an absolute value. It's because there are many factors that are going to affect that. Now, there's a property, there's some kind of a property that I said will always affect the transition, or is always going to define Tg. I said for Tg to be defined, there must be molecular motions. There must be segmental motion. Tg will not be defined if molecular motion has not taken place. So it means that Tg is dependent on the molecular motions. Now, these molecular motions are influenced by factors that are going to convert, or factors that are going to affect the segmental motion in a polymer. Then they are going to affect the transition temperature. Okay. Now, you should also know that this motion is dependent on how much space is given between particles to make those movements. Okay. So if the space is not that much big, then it means that that polymer structure is not going to be making a lot of segmental motions. And the more the more difficult it is to make segmental motion, that's the higher the temperature that is needed to impose to make sure that those motions take place. That means that Tg values increase with the reduced space of segmental motion. Now, Sorry about that. I think my phone left. So I'm sure. Are you still able to see my screen? Are we still able to see my screen?
No.
The screen is gone. Okay. Nothing still? Hello? Nothing still?
It's not reflecting.
Okay. That's bad. Okay. So probably the PC has logged out. Let me try to reshare. Um, how about now?
It can show now.
Okay, that's great. Let's continue. All right. So let me know if there is a let me know if there is any question there. Okay. So far on the glass transition temperature, where we have said that glass transition temperature is an expression of molecular motions, and that there cannot be glass transition temperature being defined without those molecular motions. So perfectly, we need to at least experience some molecular motions for us to define glass transition temperature. Have given you a range, TG ranges. So these are the ones, and then from which form it is transition and to which. Let Now, you should understand that at the end of a long chain, at the end of any chain, there is a space. Let me say there can be space within which the chain can stretch. Okay, so that is the space that we're talking about as the free volume. Okay, that is a space to be reduced segmental motion. And then if the free volume is big, then segmental motion is going to be very easy. Okay, segmental motion is going to be very easy, and then therefore the glass transition temperature is going to be reduced. Okay, I'm sure you are able to see the screen now so that we continue. This one has wasted our time. Okay. All right. Okay. Right. So segmental motion in polymers is facilitated by the empty space. Okay. It's facilitated by the empty space in between the polymer chain ends called the free volume. So this free volume is a very important space because if it becomes small, then it affects the polymer movement or the segmental motion. If it becomes big, then it affects the segmental motion. So we need to know how it affects when this free volume becomes big. How is the segmental motion affected? When it becomes small, how is the segmental motion affected? Now, larger free volumes will allow free movement, okay, of chain segments. Okay, will allow free movements of chain segments, and thus reducing the glass transition temperature. Okay. So now let us look at the factors that affect the free volume and hence Tg. So what are the factors? We said Tg is not an absolute value because it depends on the factors that will affect the segmental motion. Okay? So now let us look at those factors that will affect the segmental motion. Okay? So the first factor is the polymer chain length. Now, how is polymer chain length going to affect the segmental motion? Now, longer chains provide a small free volume, hence Tg values are high. Okay, so longer chains usually they are longer such that they fit almost the whole rectangular box. They are going to fit it without leaving any space in the sides. So that means that motion is not easy in such rectangular box. Okay, in such a container, the motion is not easy because the polymers are too long. So even if they are to expand, they can't expand to a larger extent. Okay, so such is going to make the Tg. So we need a lot of energy. We need a high temperature to transition from to make these segmental motions, therefore increasing the Tg value. Remember, Tg is the temperature. So high temperatures that are Tg, meaning that will be required to convert from amorphous to viscous and more fluid. It needs to be very high. Okay, so longer chains are going to demand for high Tg values. Now, polymer side chains, how would polymer side chain be a factor that will affect the segmental motion and hence Tg value? If the side chain is either bulky or polar, there is limitation in segmental motion and hence Tg increases. Okay? Because of that limitation in movement, then Tg also increases. Why? Because of the bulkiness of the side chains. So polymer side chain, also the nature of the polymer side chain is a factor. So as a factor, you need to make sure that you give a proper explanation of polymer side chain, why polymer side chain, and how polymer side chain or nature of polymer side chain is going to affect the segmental motion, and how is it going to affect therefore the Tg value. Okay? So we say the polymer side chains, if they are bulky or polar, then it means that there is limitation in terms of motion. And when there is limitation in terms of motion, and on the other hand is because of the in addition to that, there is also reduced free end volume, then that increases the TG values. Now, polymer chain flexibility is also another factor. Flexibility of the chain. Now, two flexible polymer chains, they are too disordered, meaning they portray a lot of entropy. And if there is entropy, that means that there is too much movement. So too much movement means that there is more segmental motion. If there is more segmental motion, therefore TG values that are required are low, meaning we require only very low temperatures to make those movements. Okay. All right. I only hope you can hear me. So I've talked about polymer chain length, polymer side chain, then I've also talked about polymer chain flexibility. So those that are flexible, they exhibit high entropy and hence allow more motion and therefore reduce the TG value. So you need to know that relationship. Okay, polymer branching. Polymer chain branching, which is as good as the last point that we did. We say compared to the branched polymers, linear polymer chains provide a small free volume and hence have high TG value. So comparing a branched polymer and the linear polymer, a branched polymer has low TG value as compared to the linear one, because the linear, we said the linear one usually provides this more space, okay, than the branched one. Okay. Now, chain cross-linking is another factor that will affect the segmental motion and hence TG value. Now, compared to linear chains, cross-linked polymers have reduced entropy, and when they have reduced entropy, it means that to make segmental motion, we require a lot of temperatures, meaning high TG values are required. Now, what about the rate of processing? This is another factor that will affect segmental motion. High processing rates result in high TG values. This is because not enough segmental motion is permitted during this rapid processing. As such, the polymer is kept rigid. Okay, so if the processing time is too rapid, then it means that there is no segmental motion that is allowed. And so high TG values are usually recorded. It's because of rigidity in terms of segmental motion. Okay? Also, the last factor is the addition of plasticizers. What is a plasticizer? Prudence, are you able to define what a plasticizer is?
No.
Okay. Gift Banda, are you able to define what a plasticizer is? Gift Banda, are you there? Are you able to define?
No.
Okay. Plasticizers, these are materials that make something to behave like a plastic. Now, plasticizers make something flexible. Okay, they make something more flexible. Okay, so now plasticizer. Now you can imagine to a rigid or to a crystalline polymer, you add something that makes that polymer flexible. Now, the relationship between flexibility and the TG is that something flexible portrays a lot of motion. It exhibits a lot of motion. And when there is more motion, it means the same as the segmental motion. Meaning high segmental motion means low TG values, because just a small amount of energy that you subject this polymer to, it begins to change. It begins to change state from the amorphous to the more viscous form. So addition of plasticizers actually additional plasticizers actually reduces the TG values. Okay. This question we had it in one of our tests. It must be test 2. We had it, and I want you to pay particular attention, and I simplified this point as much as possible. So I'm sure it is very crystal clear to understand here that plasticizers make a material more flexible, thereby increasing entropy. If there is increased entropy, then it means also that there is increased mobility. Mobility is as good as segmental motion. Okay, it's as good as segmental motion. So therefore, this reduces the TG values. Remember, we said TG is an expression of molecular motion. So as long as there is more molecular motion, then TG values must decrease. If there is molecular motion, then TG values must decrease if the molecular motion goes up. So that molecular motion will also be dependent on the space that is left in the ends, called the free volume. That free volume, if it increases, then it means that there is more motion. If more motion is there, then the TG value reduces. So you should master this relationship. Okay? So you need to understand that relationship. Okay? More free volume or high free volume means more segmental motion, and that means it reduced the TG values. Okay? Then a small free volume means that there is reduced segmental motion, and then we need more TG values to make the motion in that limited space. Because we have to force things with heat, so we need the high TG values. Okay. I hope we have understood. I emphasized here we had this one. On the true or false, we had plasticizers. The true or false. We also had the chain cross-linking. I'm pretty sure that something can be tested on the cross-linking. Okay. We have reached the end of our today's discussion. But before we end, let me just give you one application of the glass transition temperature. Glass transition temperature has been widely used to explain some chewable dosage forms, some chewable solid dosage forms, such as some gums, such as some gums like a tragacanth. It's a certain gum, a tragacanth. So they have applied that polymer tragacanth to some chewable gums. Why? They have the way the chewable gums or the chewable tablets. Let me say just the chewable tablets, not chewable gums. The chewable tablets, they contain the medication incorporated into a polymer, and that polymer is temperature dependent. So when it is outside the mouth, when it is just under the what we call the ambient temperature, meaning the storage temperature, it is solid in nature. But immediately you put it into the mouth, it begins to soften. Why? Because the temperature for the mouth is higher. Meaning that tragacanth gum as a polymer, its TG value is a temperature of the mouth. So the TG value of the mouth, the temperature of the mouth tends to facilitate segmental motion in that tragacanth gum, and then motion takes place. If motion takes place, meaning there is conversion from a solid amorphous to a more rubbery and more viscous form. And we know that a gum, when you have chewed it, it becomes a bit more rubbery. It becomes not a bit, it actually becomes more rubbery. And when it becomes more rubbery, it means that now it gives space for drug that is embedded in that gum to begins to diffuse out into the mouth environment. And then somebody can swallow that drug, and then the drug will stay. Now that is one important application of glass transition temperature. If you thought if it was something that you just needed to know theoretically, you need to know it also practically. So that is one application. Then just one last thing. Most polymers, I said that under the morphologic properties, we said there are three morphologic forms. We said they are crystalline, semi-crystalline, and amorphous. Most polymers, they are semi-crystalline. Most of them are semi-crystalline polymers, meaning they contain some portions that are crystals and then other portions are amorphous. So most polymers are semi-crystalline. And when we say semi-crystalline, it means that they melt at a range of temperatures, meaning they don't have a fixed temperature at which they can all at once melt. There is a range of temperature at which they should melt or change. Since we've come to the end of today's session, I want to give you the heads up on what we're going to be dealing with tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be dealing with the molecular weights of polymers and the sample exam problems. I'm going to include, I think, by in time, I should be able to include the exam sample problems. And then we are also going to look at the solution properties of polymers. In other words, we're going to be looking at the viscosity in detail of polymers, meaning polymers in liquid form. This is where we're also going to look at polymer gels, and then we're going to look at their properties of gels, type 1 gels, type 2 gels, and their properties. I am sure we had a great time together, though there was a bit of disturbance in the process. Yeah, unless there's a question, I have come to my end. I've come to the end of my presentation. Is there any question that you have or anything you would like to clarify? Any question?